We can finish our lesson with a discussion of this point. And this now relates to asking from the creation. Asking the makhluqeen, those who are created. We've spoken now in detail about asking the creator, the khaliq, the one who is the razzaq, the one who is dhul quwwat al-mateen, the creator, the provider, the possessor of immense strength. In contrast to this, then the Shaykh says, with respect to asking the creation, he says, وَأَمَّا سؤال المخلوقين فلا تسأل أحدا لأن الإسلام يريد منك أن تكون عزيزا ولله العزة ولرسوله وللمؤمنين. He says, as for asking the creation, do not ask anything the creation, anyone from the creation. Do not ask them for anything. Because Islam wants you to be an honorable person. He wants you to be a person who is lofty and honorable, with dignity and respect. And in the Quran we read, وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةِ, to Allah belongs al-izzah, meaning might and honor, and to His Messenger, and to the believers. And this is actually in Surah Al-Munafiqun, the chapter on the hypocrites, surah number 63, verse number 8. And so do not acknowledge ubudiyyah except to Allah. Do not manifest your neediness and your poverty and your incapacity and so on and so forth, the qualities that we mentioned before. Do not manifest and display those qualities except to Allah Azza wa Jal, not to any of the creation. So he says that don't humble and lower yourself and degrade yourself to any of the creation. And we shouldn't confuse this, what we are speaking of, because we are speaking about something specific here. That you degrade and lower yourself by manifesting your need for the creation, by asking the creation for needs. This should not be confused by being humble in ways that Allah has commanded you to be humble. For example, in Surah Al-Isra, we see that Allah Azza wa Jal, He commands, وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جُنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. Speaking about the parents, that lower the wing of humility, of mercy, meaning to your parents. So being humble and lowering yourself, this is not the type of degrading quality that is condemned or prohibited. We're not speaking about this. Rather, this is something that Allah commands. It is from obedience to Him, that you are humble, that you are merciful, that you are modest in front of your parents, because this is something that is desirable. And likewise, as he says, وَكَذَلِكَ الطَّاعَةِ لِلْمُعَلِّمِ وَوَلِيِّ الْأَمْرِ. Likewise, when you are humble to a teacher or to the leader of the Muslims, the Waliul Amr, and all these other such things, all of this is from the bab of adab and akhlaq. This is to do with etiquette and manners, right? We are not speaking about this. These affairs are not the ibadah, ubudiyyah, right? These are not affairs which constitute the ibadah which is requested from a servant. So we must distinguish between this and between that. Between when you lower and degrade yourself by asking other people. And Allah does not want you to do this. He does not want you to do this. And this is prohibited, in fact. And there are only a number of situations in which there is an exception to this prohibition. And this is in the hal of ad-durura, of absolute necessity. And then the Shaykh mentions a beautiful, nice hadith from Sahih Muslim, which clarifies this affair. And this is a hadith in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said to Qabisa, one of the companions, Qabisa al-Hilali, radiyallahu anhu, he said, Ya Qabisa, inna al-mas'ala la tahillu illa li ahadi thalatha. O Qabisa, indeed asking is not lawful except for one of three. Except for one of three. رجل تحمل حمالة فحلت له المسألة حتى يصيبها ثم يمسك. So the first of those people is a man who undertook upon himself a responsibility of reconciling between two parties. Like, so for example, two tribes have a dispute and there's a war. and some people get killed. So in the midst of all of this, an individual will take the responsibility of wanting to put an end to this fitna and reconcile, and he wants to raise some money to basically make up for whatever, the blood money and whatever else is needed to remove this fitna and to stop the fighting and whatever else and to reconcile. So this person now goes out and he basically asks people to contribute. Right? This is one exception. Then the hadith continues. وَرَجُلٌ أَصَابَتْهُ جَائِحَةٌ اجْتَاحَتْ مَالَهُ فَحَلَّتْ لَهُ الْمَسْأَلَةِ حتى يصيب قواما من عيش أو قال سدادا من عيش. The second one is a man to whom some sort of calamity has struck, and his wealth then becomes destroyed. It is permissible for him to ask until he is now able to find the means to subsist again, until he finds that his livelihood is now established again. So for example, to explain this part, maybe there is a flood, maybe a building collapses, maybe there's some sort of calamity. This man has lost his entire house, he's lost all his provisions, right? He's basically destitute. This man can now go and he can ask the people. And he can continue asking up until he now is able to receive his sustenance and is able to establish his livelihood. So this is now a second exception. This is not considered blameworthy asking. It is permissible to do so. The third one, وَرَجُلٌ أَصَابَتْهُ فَاقَةٌ حَتَّى يَقُومَ ثَلَاثَةٌ مِنْ ذَوِي الْحِجَى مِنْ قَوْمِهِ لَقَدْ أَصَابَتْ فُلَانًا فَاقَةٌ فَحَلَّتْ لَهُ الْمَسْأَلَةِ حتى يصيب قواما من عيش أو قال سدادا من عيش فما سواهن من المسألة يا قبيسة سحتا يأكلها صاحبها سحتا. He said, as for the third, it is a man to whom poverty has struck, and then 3 other people from his people, from his tribe, from his location, who are people who understand and know from his people, they say that so-and-so person has been afflicted with poverty. So now 3 people have to recognize and verify and establish that indeed this person is in poverty. Right? So a person who's been struck with poverty, and then 3 people come and they say so-and-so Falan is suffering from poverty. Then he may ask, it is lawful for him to ask, until he again regains and is able to establish his livelihood. And whatever is besides them, besides these 3 of asking, or qabisa, it is suht. It is like something that is ill-gotten. It is ill-gotten, it is taken in falsehood, it is devoured in falsehood. And the person who eats it, then is eating from falsehood. Right? So look at this. So the Shaykh then goes on to explain the hadith along the lines that we mentioned, each of the 3. And so, look at all of this, what it indicates, that anything besides these 3 situations is a type of suhut, it is a type of deceptive and a fraudulent type of, asking. And why? Because here now a person is manifesting iftiqar to other than Allah. And he's lowering his soul, is making idlal of the nafs and dhulm of the nafs. He's oppressing himself and he's making iftiqar to other than Allah, and he falls into a type or a manifestation of shirk, not the major shirk, but a minor type of shirk, wherein the heart becomes attached to other than Allah in an unhealthy manner. Right? So this is a type of minor shirk. From the minor shirk, for example, is the one we see in the hadith: may the worshipper of the dinar be wretched, may the worshipper of the dirham be wretched, may the worshipper of the certain type of cloth, the silk or the be wretched. This is not worship, which is major shirk, but what, as the scholars explain, this is when the heart becomes attached to material things. This now enters into a type of shirk, which is a minor shirk. So similarly here, when a person, he comes out of the ubudiyyah of Allah and then lowers himself and degrades himself by asking for other people, then this now is a type of shirk. Why? Because he's manifested iftiqar to other than Allah. This is the angle as to why it is a type of minor shirk. Whereas this type of iftiqar should only be in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. And it is only in the time of durura, absolute necessity, as we've already clarified in what has preceded. So after all of this, the Shaykh says, let us therefore, our asking, our iftiqar, our feeling of neediness, all of our needs, all of our requests, should only be to Allah, who is Al-Ahad, As-Samad. When we say the surah, Qul huwallahu ahad, say He is Allah the One, and He is As-Samad. These names, we should understand the meaning of these names. What is As-Samad? As-Samad, one of the meanings of As-Samad, is the one to whom all of the creatures and all of the servants turn to for their needs. This is the meaning of As-Samad. He is the self-sustaining one, meaning the one who is not in need of anyone else, yet everyone else is in need of him. This is the meaning of As-Samad, the one to whom all the creatures turn to, yet he is in need of no creature. So we should understand this, and this should be an aqeedah that is deeply embedded in ourselves and in our children. We should teach this aqeedah to our children, to be like this, and not to lower themselves and degrade themselves by asking from other people, but ask from Allah and then take the ways and means and make tawakkul. And so a person should, the Shaykh says, وَمَعَ الْأَسَفْ الشَّدِيدِ, you see from the people are those who ask for their sustenance from other than Allah, and not only other than Allah, from the dead, let alone the living. Look at how degrading this is. Forget ubudiyah to a created thing, to a created living thing. But you are making ubudiyah to a dead, someone that is dead, and who is even more severely unable in controlling life and death and benefit and harm and sustenance, let alone the living person. At least even the living person, he has some ability and means, but the dead person has none whatsoever. So with great regret, the Shaykh says, we see that there are people who are present today who, request their removal of harm and sustenance from other than Allah until even the dead. And this is clear, manifest guidance. And so then the Shaykh finishes by telling us what types of things that we should be asking Allah Azza wa Jal for in light of all of what we mentioned. So the Shaykh says, first of all, ask from Allah that He teaches you. Ask Allah, utlub min Allah an yuallimak. Ask Allah that He teaches you. And secondly, that He provides for you beneficial knowledge and righteous action. Ask Allah for al-ilm al-nafi' wal-amal salih. Beneficial knowledge and righteous action. Ask Him for that. And ask Him, make dua to Him and ask Him to grant you success in ibadah, al-ibadah, and at-taqwa and ikhlas. Ask Him for these things. O Allah, grant me success in your worship and in establishing taqwa and in sincerity in my actions. And there are supplications in the Quran and the Sunnah which address these affairs. Likewise, you ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant you success in goodness, in khair and uprightness, that you are upright and that you are upon goodness. And ask Him that He gives you sustenance in the worldly sense, your rizq, and that He grants you health, that He gives you afiyah, meaning safety and well-being. You ask Him for those things. And you ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect you from disobedience and sins, that you fall into disobedience and sins. And you ask Allah for everything that you need, whether for your life, for your worldly life, or for the affairs of your religion. So these are the 5 or 6 things that you should ask from Allah Azza wa Jal. We'll mention them again. First, you're asking for beneficial knowledge and righteous action. Al-ilm al-nafi' wal-amal salih. And then that you ask Him, He gives you success in His worship, in ibadah and taqwa and ikhlas, in sincerity. And then that He keeps you upon uprightness. And then in terms of your worldly affairs, that He gives you rizq, lawful, halal, tayyib, pure, wholesome rizq, and afiyah, which is health and well-being, asking for these affairs. And likewise, that He protects you from sin and disobedience. Seek refuge in Allah from disobeying Him and from being sinful. And ask Allah after that for everything that you may be in need of for your worldly affairs and for the affairs of the deen and the affairs of the hereafter. And within the Quran and the Sunnah and the various ad'iyah, the supplications for the morning and the evening, you will find many supplications that comprehensively include all of these things. So you make dua in the morning and the evening with those type of supplications, and this now you will be acting upon what we have discussed in this lesson of these great meanings within this Hadith Qudsi. So we'll conclude at that point there, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll continue with the point number 5 in the Hadith in the next lesson. I will conclude there. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
Assalamu alaikum. I just have a question. He's asking, the Bible is justified asking their so-called righteous by saying